All right, everybody, let's get started. So welcome to our second webinar, Lynxspring and Tridium, together since 1999. I'm Marc Petock, Chief Marketing and Communication Officer at Lynxspring. Thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it. A couple of housekeeping items, as usual with these webinars. We will be recording today's webinar and we'll make it available on Lynxspring's marketing and YouTube channel. In addition, we will make available today's PowerPoint deck. If you have questions, please use the Zoom question function. Joining me again today are Troy Fenley, Business Development Manager at Tridium, and Lynxspring's Go Guy, and Kevin Mamajek, Senior Systems Engineer at Tridium. At our last webinar last week, we explored the history of Lynxspring and Tridium, which now spans 22 years. How we were one of the first and early adopters of the Niagara framework, how Lynxspring played a vital role in the development of Niagara AX and the Generation 2 JACEs, how Lynxspring became the first Niagara portability partner with the market release of our portfolio of Genesis Edge controllers and expansion modules, and the introduction of the very first IP Niagara horizontal architecture. In addition, we looked at key features within Release 4.9. When it comes to a software platform, a continuous release cycle is vital for many reasons, such as security, usability, new features and functions, compatibility, and maintaining compliance. So today, we're going to take you on a sneak peek at the next release of Niagara 4, which is Release 4.10. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who is going to go ahead and present the features, functions of the upcoming 4.10. Kevin?
All right. Thank you, Mark. So this I showed in the last webinar. I'm just going to kind of review it real quick because this is, again, depending on where you jump in to Niagara, there's a lot of enhancements that we've delivered over the years. So things that I think are important are usually enterprise type things like the LDAP support. There's now backup as a service. There's a lot of HTML work. You remember the AX, it was all Java based. And as the internet moved to HTML5, so did Niagara. So there's a lot of things over the releases that make that HTML experience much better. And we continue to improve that. So you can kind of review that. You can kind of see there's a lot of things that are there. Note that provisioning and increasing the speed of Niagara, both in the supervisor, there are key things like the system database and being able to tag the data. That's really important. So again, this is a journey. We're going to talk about what will be released with 4.10. So this actually builds on the 4.9 release. So in 4.9, we've got some enhancements for visualizations and tagging. With 4.10, we're going to start to optimize a lot of that delivery. So you'll see that with the tags, remember how I told you that tags started out just to kind of identify geolocation, and then all of a sudden we could use tags and hierarchies, and then we could add tags to PX pages to make them highly portable. Well, with 4.10, we're adding the tag support into the system DB, which allows us to kind of cache up all the data on all the JACEs below it into the supervisor, so there's high-speed access to that supervisor. So that is being added in. You'll also see that we looked at how we created these pages, and we wanted to enhance the speed at which they render. So you'll see some of that in 4.10, an HTML5 tag manager. So that's essentially another tag tool can't overemphasize tagging. And then you'll see some authentication and some provisioning components. So with that, I will kind of dig a little deeper into what 4.10 is all about. So again, visualization, deployment, security, connectivity, and compliance. Those are the main categories that we've continued to kind of group all of these in for 4.9 and in 4.10. So we'll take a deep dive into what we're adding for the enhancements in visualization, for the development of the ACE engine, for some security enhancements, and the authentication. So first thing is that we had a video viewer, the ability to stream video from cameras or security systems in Niagara that needed to go through that journey of removing the Java dependency and then rewrite those modules as an HTML5 module. So in this release, we've added the surveillance viewer and the direct camera component where I can connect to these access cameras directly in a PX page. So this is, you see a lot of this for people that are integrating these security systems in so that they can get access to the video. And it's cool, it's fun, right? So we do discovery to find the cameras so you don't have to know the IP addresses, and all of that's linked into now a PX page that allows you to bring that up. And of course, you can alarm it and have it come up when it finds, you know, if you use one of the milestone systems, you can do video analytics and match against people's pictures and so forth when they come in front of a camera. So again, I can't overemphasize tagging. Tagging you can use in analytics and hierarchies and PX pages. And so one of the things that was something I kept asking for is, how do I see all the tags, right? Can we have a tool that will allow me to indirectly tag, or, you know, create rules, or show me what I've actually direct tagged? And so we have this new tag manager that will start to give us visibility of those tags. Normally I have to go and do a search. Did I miss something? Now I can search for all my set points and make sure they're tagged correctly. So this will be a nice tool for visualizing that. It will show you direct and implied, which is important to know that your rules are working. So again, it's another tool in the toolbox to help make that tagging experience much easier and much more efficient. So again, I can't overemphasize, if you haven't explored tagging, I have like a little YouTube video up there, a Niagara Pro tip that walks through how to create tag rules. It's in your best interest to kind of look at how to create these rules, because it starts to do things automatically, and then you don't have to worry about that process. So again, more and more things are involving tagging, so take a look. So Niagara, we had this ACE engine, and what's important is that Lynxspring is actually bringing that ACE engine to their hardware. This was a kind of a behind the scenes thing that Tridium had to do in order to get that hardware to run that ACE engine. But the thing that you need to think about with ACE is that it actually allows you to template these applications and then manage that in an enterprise. Plus, the ACE engine will boot much faster than the JACE itself. It's like two little virtual machines running in there. And so the ACE engine will boot with, 8 seconds, right? I had a JACE running a stoplight. When I converted that code over into the ACE engine, right, which is still wire sheet work. It's not a matter of I have to relearn a tool. It's just I have to use a different palette. I converted that. So before I would boot the JACE and the stoplight would be down for a couple minutes, with ACE, it started right back up. So it's important to kind of look at what your needs are on the edge, because this will become a vital tool in that edge communication and things of that nature. So to help facilitate managing these devices, and this was again a story that was in 4.9 and we continue into 4.10, we keep adding new provisioning steps. And why we're doing this is, what you have to realize is, if I have a couple thousand of these things, I don't want to go and visit a couple thousand to update them. That's why we've created with the ACE engine an ability to actually create an application template that is hot swappable on these devices. So that's something I can't do on a JACE. I can push out templates, right? but I can't do it in the core component like I can with the ACE, where I swap out services within that template and the actual code for that. So this is something that we want to continue to support, and then we've got to make it easy. So you'll see with 4.10, we've added new provisioning steps. We've had the ability to upgrade those installed templates, right? So I can actually say, all right, the template has been modified, push it all out to those 1,000 edge devices. You'll see that we're going to create some new certificate tools to make putting certificates on those things much easier in a bulk format, right? So again, the provisioning tools are a set that when you start to do bulk deploy of those, it makes it so much easier to manage that process and get those things up and running. So the other thing that we've heard in our licensing scheme is that these edge products should be treated a little differently, right? So if I was going to have a bunch of edge products directly connect to the supervisor right now, or previous versions of Niagara, it was kind of one Niagara connection and one edge device. And what we've heard is that we need to actually have multiple connections to that supervisor with only one network connection. So with 4.10, we've actually modified that licensing component so we can facilitate connecting one Niagara connection up to 10 devices, 10 edge devices, right? Not JACEs, but actual edge devices. So that's important to know on how we want to scale these types of things out into our enterprise. So bulk certificate signing, anytime you deal with certificates, I want to roll my eyes, right? Because it's like, okay, is it a code signing certificate? Is it a device certificate? Is it a VPN certificate? Is it an encryption certificate? Well, what we want is, again, with these edge devices, usually you want to put device certificates on, right? So that you can get these things to authenticate with a certificate so that you don't have any outside things trying to connect to them. So part of that process is we have a certificate signing tool and request tool in Niagara to kind of alleviate the pain. If I'm in an IT organization, they usually have those tools separate, so I can kind of push that requirement onto the IT team. But if you're in an installation where you want to do the certificates, all of that's built in. And so we have a signing tool that will allow you to actually start to provision all of these edge devices, where the edge devices during the provisioning actually creates a request for a signed certificate. And then the provisioning manager will go in and say, yep, I got it, signs it, and it just keeps going down the line. So part of that tool is so that we can actually automate this process and make that a little more streamlined. So prior to what I say, last presentation, right? The last webinar last week, we talked about 4.9 adding a new AWS authentication. In 4.10, we added a Google authentication method. So again, this is more what customers are asking. If we create a connection to one of those clouds, we want to make it easy for me to authenticate, because they usually have all these long keys, right? Here's a device, here's a key for that device. We want to make that process easier. So Google really wanted to have our JWT support for our driver. And so that authentication module is now available in the MQTT driver. And so if you're not familiar with MQTT allows you to actually take data from Niagara and communicate it to a cloud server, right? A component that's also speaking MQTT. So I can publish and subscribe my information, so to speak, to that server. That server could then take some things and then publish it back to Niagara. So it is that communication to these external clouds that allows you to do that. And again, in 4.9, we released that JSON toolkit. So that toolkit allows you to actually create these JSON packets or messages that you would then send through the MQTT driver. So again, all of that's coming together. We've added those enhancements to enable more connectivity and easier to create those data packets and send them to the cloud. So one of the things that, again, I'm going to, I kind of review this, right, is that we are starting the process of shutting down or making the JACEs, right, the Niagara framework more and more secure. So over time, we are requiring our third parties to begin to code sign any new driver that they've written for the Niagara framework. So Niagara from its inception was code signed. What's that mean? It means that we actually have a special certificate that is around each module so that when Niagara starts up, it verifies that those code signing certificates are still valid and nobody's tampered with any of that code. So what's happening is we're asking, and we're giving plenty of time, right, our third party driver creators to actually start to sign their code, right? And so there's a whole method that's there. They just need to take advantage of it, get a code signing, and then that will allow Niagara to, at one point in time, flip the switch to where we're completely code secure, right? And so that's our goal. We want to move it to high. We know that it takes time. So in 4.8, we were in the low mode. You really didn't know that your modules weren't signed unless you ran the security dashboard or you looked at the console, and it would kind of bark at you to say, hey, by the way, these aren't signed. In 4.9, we moved it to medium. So what that means is 4.9 will start up, but your third-party modules won't, right? It will kind of stop and say, hey, these aren't code signed. Now, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't, don't panic. We can tell Niagara to move back to low, but now you're making that conscious security decision. We're not. Okay. So for folks that want to do that, I recommend just get the third-party module signed, and then the problem goes away. If you've got customers that are doing in-house certificates and they haven't code signed it, you need to kind of look at it. Lynxspring code sign. So we're good on their modules, but keep in mind that that's going to happen. So if you run a 4.9 or 4.10 installation, watch the console. If they've got third-party modules, they're not going to initiate unless you move that setting back, okay? And again, somewhere down the line, we're going to flip it to high and not let you go back to medium and low, because that, again, ensures the integrity of that code base. And today, it's all around security, right? So this is building up to that end run game where we can secure the JACE completely for that code. And believe me, large enterprises and the government, they all want that. That's their goal. That's their push to make sure that that happens. And we're kind of used to it today with iPhone apps and Google apps, right? So that's nothing new. Again, for 4.10, this is just kind of a review of what databases and infrastructure we support. We're removing the stuff that the industry has not supported off of our support ticket, off our support grid. So these are the current systems that we support for Linux, for what servers they might be connecting to for Windows. So this isn't a gotcha. This is just us following what the industry is doing, because a lot of those don't have support with the actual companies that publish the servers, right? Microsoft has dropped off a lot of their support for that. So again, that's just, we keep that. It's up on our website in the documentation so that you can kind of see what things are. So if you go into an older installation, you can kind of understand what they have in their environment and how Niagara will fit into that. So this is a quick rundown, right, of system DB added to the visualization. So that what that means is if you are utilizing system DB, right now it will take everything but the tags. And that was important that we get the tags into that database. And essentially a JACE every so often will index everything on it. And then it sends that index up to the supervisor. So literally with system DB, I can hit the supervisor and display everything underneath my Niagara network extremely quickly, because the tagged or the cached data is in the database already. It's not something I have to pull for, right? Which would decrease that speed. So systemdb was a big step. Adding the tags was even better, because now I can do the analytics lickety split in the supervisor. So that's important. UI enhancements. So we're now essentially prior to, and I kind of spoke on that quickly, and I didn't tell you what, is that again, we are essentially with the new PX page that you can create, you will tell Niagara not to do any of the HTML5 rendering at the JACE or the supervisor level. You'll do it more in a modern way, which is have the browser of the client do all the rendering. So today you didn't have that choice. With the UX enhancements, which I forgot to emphasize, is that you will have the choice in 4.10 to actually flip that switch. So for folks that love HTML5 and fast rendering, this is a big improvement for you to take a look at. All right, adding the, moving the Java from surveillance, the tag manager, the portability things for ACE, and the support for the enhancements for security. And again, overemphasizing, it will with 4.9 and 4.10, third-party drivers or applications that are written as a driver or services that aren't code signed won't run. I can flip my security back to low so that they will. MQTT, adding more authentication, and of course the certificate compliance tools to allow us to bulk load. So that is the summary of 4.10. If you're interested in some pro tech tips during the COVID time, my colleague and I put up a bunch of real quick 5-minute, 6-minute YouTube videos that kind of help you through the process. So I have an analytics series, and there's series on other types of tips and tricks on Niagara. But what we found was I didn't have, usually when people want help, they rarely read the documentation, right? You go up to YouTube and find a video. So we've added that feature, and I think you'll find that very useful. And for the analytics, it helps you get over the hard knocks that I had to learn when I went through it. So that's it in review, and we thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Well, thanks, Kevin. We've got 2 quick questions here. One, I'm gonna let you answer this, and I'll answer the second one. The first question is, can ACE be used in a JACE 8000, hence a Genesis PC 8000? I'll let you answer that, Kevin.
So what was the question again?
Can ACE be used on a JACE 8000 and ours, a Genesis PC 8000?
So great question. And to clarify, no. This is a specific piece of edge hardware that contains that container. I'm with you on that, though. It would be nice if it does, but right now it is only on that specific edge product. So Mark, you're coming out with an edge controller with ACE. So that mechanism will only run on that particular device, not on the JACEs themselves or on the FX80s.
Thank you. And that was the second question we've got here. Does ACE run on the Edge series family? It's coming. We are in a process of our R&D team is looking at it, playing with it, and we will be announcing that at some point here in the near future, but the answer is yes. So with that, I want to go ahead and wrap up and thank everybody for joining us today. Special thanks to Kevin and Troy. If you have thoughts and ideas about future webinars such as these, the last 2 we've done, let us know. Let me know. If you have questions, or Lynxspring can be of additional service, drop marketing a quick email, marketing@lynxspring.com. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you the next time. Thanks.